Hello, and welcome to the July 2023 Real Estate Market Update presented to you by the Reby Homes team. Well, there's certainly no shortage of headlines pointing out that prices and sales are falling. However, there are two important factors to keep in mind when you see those headlines. Number one is that national economists such as Case-Shiller, NAR, CoreLogic, and more use a year-over-year analyzation. So they're comparing today's data with this time last year, which just so happened to be the peak of the market frenzy. So no surprise that things are down from that point. Number two is that these economists will often use a 3-month moving average when they collect their data and spend 2 months analyzing it before they release it to the public. So why is this important? Well, although it doesn't mean that they're inaccurate, it just means that they're a little bit behind. Comparing any of the last 6 months to the peak of the market last year will yield results that show negative trends. Comparing our current month with the last 30 days of data to the past month, 2 months, 4 months, or even 6 months will tell a much different story. This is why it's important for us as your local economists to share the most recent, up-to-date data that we have with you each month to paint the full picture. So let's start by taking a look at our inventory. This graph shows active listings going back to June of last year. You can see where we were, and then we can see an increase in inventory when interest rates started increasing, largely due to sellers realizing that this may be their last chance to sell at the top of the market. And then, of course, when prices started going down, so did our inventory. Here's another look at active listings from just this year. We started the year off at 15,563 and are now down to 10,200. And not only are we down month over month, but we're down historically speaking, that green line being 2019. And moving on to average sales price per square foot, we know that it peaked in May at $305 a square foot, came down to $271 in December, then up to $288 in June, and is currently sitting at $279 for July. However, we still have 2.5 weeks of sales to factor into that, so we'll have to wait and see where that number ends up. And obviously, the number of sales per month is going to impact the average price per square foot, so let's take a look at that. This graph shows monthly sales dated back to January of last year. We can see the high sales volume in the first half of 2022 when the market was still crazy, then that drop off in Q3 when interest rates soared and prices came down, and then so far this year, things have been trending back up, although still below the frenzy. We still have about 2.5 weeks left in July, so we'll see where that number ends up. This graph shows the historical seasonal trends for sales volumes from 2017, 18, and 19. We can see that there tends to be a trend downward from July to about December. So it won't be a huge surprise if we start seeing that trend from now until the end of the year. The monthly average sales price shows a similar trend, peaking at $600,000 in May of last year, bottoming out in December at $523,000, and then increasing through June all the way up to $586,000. This month so far, with the 1,168 closed sales, we're at $539,000, but we'll have to wait and see where that number ends up when July is over. And let's take a quick look at price reductions. We can see that July through December of last year, there were tons of reductions happening each week to account for the spike in interest rates. However, if we take a look at the first half of this year, we can see they've significantly slowed and seem to be continuing that trend. And just to give you an idea of the numbers, in October of last year, there were an average of 750 to 1,400 price reductions per week, whereas June of this year, there was an average of 1 to 200. And of course, this can be largely attributed to the immense decrease in sales volume. And let's take a look at average days on market for closed sales, so the amount of time between day one on the market and the day it closed. This graph goes back to 2018, so we can see seasonal trends, the unicorn years of 2020 and 2021, and where we are today. Pre-unicorn years, the average days on market sat between 50 and 70. We saw the average reach 81 in February of this year, which makes sense given the list date for those homes would have been back in November or December. So they likely had some price adjusting to do before accepting a contract. We've since come down from 81 to 64 in June, and so far in July, we're at 57. And now we'll look at foreclosures. It's no surprise that they're up from the unicorn years when foreclosure rates were the lowest in history because of the forbearance programs, but those have since subsided, and thankfully foreclosure rates remain historically low. We can thank stricter lending practices and phenomenal home appreciation and equity for that. Here's a great depiction of foreclosure rates going back to 2008. Very evident that homeowners are in a much better position than they were back then. And the last thing I'll talk about is rental prices. This graph shows quarterly trends going back to 2021. We can see a similar trend to home prices where the second quarter of 2022 shows prices coming down through the fourth quarter, but then we can see an increase in Q1 and Q2 of this year with the average rent now just under $2,300 a month. Well, that'll wrap up our July 2023 market update for the Phoenix metro area. We hope you found this helpful, and as always, if you have any questions or would like to see data in your specific area, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next month.